The following episode of Crusade for Myth Drannor is adapted from the Raiders of Galath's Roost by Skip Williams, published in Dungeon Magazine number 87. Back in the hall, beyond sight of the source of his terror, Massul drinks down a potion of enlargement, and just in time as nearly a dozen reinforcements hustle down the stairs to join the combat. He crushes the first Zhentarim soldier to emerge from the stairwell with a colossal hammer blow, shouting a warning to his companions.
We got company coming down, and they're not too friendly.
Down in the temple, one of the Xvimite acolytes raises her mates over the prone form of Iyachtu, demanding that the party surrender or else. Túrendil retorts with words and Rill with arrows, but her shots go wide. Unable to get to Iyachtu or his captor over the pit, Túrendil drives Nephilium home into the closest Zhent. Unexpectedly, Gwyneth Moondark simply utters, "No," and loses her bow, driving a shaft into the priest threatening Iyachtu. Badly hurt but not down, she brings her mace down on the unfortunate elf. Túrendil swears vengeance but cannot get to her. Kurodava the dragon mauls the Zhentarim sergeant in front of him as Rill puts a pair of arrows into the hostage taker. Leaping the pit, Gwyneth tears a strip of cloth from Iyachtu's clothes and binds his wound, likely saving the elf's life. Sudilis calls upon his patron's dark power to strike Rilyanasse paralyzed, causing the elf to freeze in place mid-draw of her bow. Leaping forward, Kurodava ends the guard that had been peppering him with a crossbow with a single swipe of a claw, but the Priest of Xvim proves harder as the blessings of his dark god deflect the dragon's bite. Rushing to the fallen catfolk's side, Túrendil feeds her his last healing potion, bringing Jade back to consciousness before rushing back out to the fight. As he does, the priest Sudilis raises his unholy symbol and waves of negative energy flow forth, striking the two elves and the dragon. Meanwhile, at the top of the stairs, Massul finds himself hard-pressed as more soldiers, apparently from a barracks the adventurers have missed, flood down the stairs. His swings going wide in the small room and soldiers hemming him in, he abandons his lucerne hammer in favor of a spare axe even as the berserker endures a battering from the Zhent's reinforcements. Down in the temple, Kurodava angrily responds to the priest in kind, blasting the central chamber with a gout of fire. Focusing her will, Rilyanasse throws off the dark power holding her in place. At the top of the stairs, one of the Zhentarim swords finds Massul. Springing up from the ground after Túrendil's healing, Jade rushes to the stairs to aid the beset dwarf. Unable to get to the high priest, Túrendil follows suit, rushing up the staircase. As another Zhent strikes him, Massul takes a step back down the stairs to gain space and swings his axe in a wide arc, slaying one of the soldiers harrying him. Kurodava delivers a savage draconic bite to Sudilis. Back at the top of the stairs, another spear-wielding Zhent joins the line and delivers a pinpoint thrust to Massul, striking the dwarf dead on the spot. Given celerity by one of Cirillale's magic jelly beans, Rill rushes up the steps and looses an arrow, felling one of the half-orc guards. One of the Zhents picks her way over Massul's corpse and brings her sword down on Túrendil, but the protection of the Seldarine barely turns the blow. A second one follows up and attacks Rilyanasse, barely nicking the archer. Seeing the stairwell blocked, Jade turns around to help Gwyneth with the imp that had been flitting around the combat, making a nuisance of itself. Backed up against the stairs, Rilyanasse drops her bow and sweeps out her sword, but the sergeant in front of her catches it on his shield. Cursing the heroes, Sudilis activates one last portal and steps through it. The dragon breathes a gout of flame at the portal in frustration. At the top of the stairs, Túrendil lends a solid blow on the orc menacing Rill. Standing over the prostrate form of the imp, Gwyneth draws back her bow and launches an arrow into the base of the fiend's skull. The devil falls dead, clearing the temple of foes. The dragon Kurodava immediately heads for the stairs to back up the elves. Túrendil suggests getting behind the dragon to make way for his breath weapon. Disregarding his advice as the Zhents continue to close in, Rill hews at the sergeant in front of her, not wanting to abandon her dropped bow, giving only a step. Jade rummages through the pockets of the fallen Xvimite acolyte, hoping to find a healing item to mend her wounds. She blindly drinks a potion, only to find not a healing draught, but a potion of cat's grace. Unwilling to leave Rill between the Zhents and the dragon, Túrendil stands his ground, only giving a single step himself. The drow Gwyneth offers aid to Jade to stanch the tabaxi's bleeding, tearing a strip of cloth from the dead priest's vestments to bind her wounds. The Zhents continue to press the elves down the stairs. Rilyanasse falls back behind the dragon, making for one of the fallen Zhentarim to appropriate his bow. Túrendil follows suit, leaving the Zhents to the dragon. Kurudava does not disappoint, lashing out with his claws and a devastating bite, slaying the lead Zhent on the spot. The surviving sergeant calls for his soldiers to form up, which Túrendil answers with a shouted taunt. The guard who killed Massul manages to stick her spear into the dragon, to much less devastating effect than on the dwarf. As more of the Zhentarim soldiers pile on, scoring more hits on the wormling, Kurudava decides he's had enough and unleashes a gout of fire up the stairs. The entire remaining garrison roasts alive in their armor. Seizing a scroll from the body of the other acolyte, Túrendil rushes over to Iyachtu Xvim and reads it over his body, reviving the stricken elf, who asks the rather obvious question of whether they have won. The priest answers in the affirmative as the party goes about stripping the Zhents of valuables before going on to ransack the rest of the citadel. Loading up the Zhentarim's horses with the honored dead and the spoils of their victory, potions, scrolls, weapons and armor, as well as sundry goods and coin, as well as the captured citadel captain, the party activates the portal to return to Mistledale. Before returning to Ashabanfur to claim the bounty, they part ways with the rescued prisoners on various terms. Toby, the missing stable boy, and Axel, the ornery stallion, return to Walcott Manor. Other horses and stable hands, as well as kitchen staff, are returned to the Dales, free to reunite with their friends and families having escaped a life of servitude at the hands of the Zhents. Túrendil sternly reminds Gwyneth Moondark of their bargain, and the consequences should she be caught scheming in Cormanthor again. Iyachtu Xvim parts ways with the four with a few words of gratitude, seeking his elven companions for a joyous reunion of his own and to mourn their fallen. Immediately, the dragon, ne Divitia Torm, Kurudava excitedly begins pestering the party for plans of their next adventure, seeking out evil in every corner of the Dales. The party's ranger diplomatically dissuades him of this notion, assuring the dragon that they could achieve greater deeds while apart, and that they will be in contact with him when their need is greatest. In town, as they sort out the spoils to pay for the resurrection magic to return Massul to life, Rilyanasse urges the party to be certain to separate out any likely stolen belongings on the off chance they can be reunited with their owners, as Jade picks through the weapons and gear they had relieved the Zhentarim of, to better bolster her offenses. Eager to have their friend back at full strength, the four take the time and coin to hire a priest for the proper rituals to restore the dwarf and look forward to a couple of 10 days of rest, relaxation, and the pursuit of their favorite hobbies. Thus concludes the Raiders of Galath's Roost. Join us next week for further adventures of the Crusade for Myth Drannor. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you for the next adventure.